Good evening, Holly Choe, Assistant Conductor to Paavo Järvi, and good evening to Ilona Schmiel, Executive Director of the Tonhalle Zürich. Actually, I do not want to make a big introduction because everybody knows you, and it would be a shame to spend too much time for the introduction since you have so much to tell about your career, about your life, about what's turning around you, let's say. It's interesting, both of you are leaders, but while we know that there are probably as many female soloists more than men, they are still rare in leadership positions in your field. Why, Holly?
Just historically, we haven't had so many role models, especially for conducting. Not so many female conductors have come through in proportion to the male conductors. So people coming from my generation and younger, they don't necessarily go straight to wanting to become a conductor as they're growing up, because what we see on TV, on YouTube, it's mostly male conductors. But I'm hopeful that it'll start to tip over the other side with time.
So actually it's a lack of role models. So how did you dealt with not having a role model?
I certainly had great male conductors who were my role models and teachers. And I actually didn't really think of the fact that I'm a female conductor until it's just a few years ago. As I got more into the professional industry, it didn't reach me as I was a student. I just was focused on the music, wanting to learn the repertoire, technique, and growing my musicianship. And I never really thought, oh, I'm a female conductor. And interestingly, most of my female conducting friends also don't think of themselves as a female conductor. I think we do our best to be just a good musician, good leader, rather than a gender roles. Yeah.
The same with you, actually, Ilona. You are, I don't know, a female executive director of such a large music company than the Tonhalle. So you are probably the first and only, maybe I don't know where, but in Europe I don't know anybody else. You certainly didn't have a role model, but as I heard from Holly, maybe you shouldn't even think of having a role model. You should just go your way without having in mind being a woman or having a woman as a role model. What do you think about it?
I must say I agree upon Holly totally, because for me it was the same. I never thought about it. I never thought about it before trying to get a really leadership position. There it was the first time ever that I realized it in that way, that it could be an advantage on the one hand side or a disadvantage, because I read an announcement and I have only seen the male form. This was in 1997. And I must say, this was for me something where I thought, oh, this is really interesting. I just called this man, obviously, who has written this announcement and doing research for the Glocke, for the intendant there, and artistic and also the executive leader of a concert hall in Bremen. And so I got the answer, honestly speaking, we haven't waited for you. But anyway, and I said the same question I have asked, and you're looking for someone really young. You announced that. What is young? What is young meaning? So we had this question of age, we had the question, a gender question at the same time, but I decided then, why not? I will go into that competition, and I managed to come out as the person who was announced.
It's interesting when this man said we didn't wait for you. So obviously he was not expecting a woman to ask for this position. Yeah. So it means maybe they didn't think about it, but maybe they didn't want it.
No, I think they just didn't think about it. It was just the way to say, sorry, we haven't thought about it, that we need also a male and a female form. So I think it was just a nice answer in a way to find out if I would really try to do that and ask him again, and if I would have the power to resist on that. So this was a question for him afterwards.
Okay.
It was like a game, you know, at the telephone. It was a game. How come we out of that?
Which
and
means
what would
you
be the
have to
result?
be quite self-confident, and you have to say, yes, of course, I can do that. Are you this type of person who says, of course, I can do it?
At different parts of my life, this feeling comes and goes. I think when you don't know so much and you just have this fire and passion, you think you can do it. And then you learn on as you go that, wow, there's so much that I don't know. Especially now that I'm working with Paavo, I see how much I don't know and how much I still lack. So that confidence becomes more of a modesty and humility, really. And then you keep filling up your areas where you're lacking, and you just continue to go forward, knowing that there will be setbacks, but eventually the growth is going to come. Yeah.
It's interesting that in Switzerland we have the suffrage only since 1971. And now we have a female assistant conductor and we have a female executive director. Is it a coincidence that it happens in Switzerland, or how do you explain the fact that we have now 2 female leaders in this so conservative Switzerland?
I can say for sure with talking with Paavo, because when I was chosen for the position, I also was a little bit confused how and why I got the position, because I had just met Paavo several months before in the summer, officially working with him. And I didn't really expect to get this email from Ilona saying, if you're interested, Paavo recommends you, would you like to have an interview? And I was ecstatic, really. I called my teacher right away, Johannes Schläfli, and I was like, Johannes, guess what just happened? And then a few months later, I'm thinking, okay, how did I get this position? And so I asked Paavo directly, may I know the reasons how you decided? And in his answer, none of it was about being a female conductor, which I really was appreciative that it was not because I'm a female conductor. And of course, he wouldn't maybe say that so directly in front of me. But there was also another interview where Melanie from Tonhalle, she interviewed him, what was your reasonings for choosing Holly? And he also said, it might seem that because she's a female conductor, that I'm trying to support female conductors. While that is true to a certain level, that is certainly not the first priority, because you have to be a good musician as a conductor, no matter what your sex is. And to put someone young in front of an orchestra at this high level, if they were not ready musically, he wouldn't put them on the podium or in this position. So that gave me, in a way, more confidence that I do belong here and I'm here to absorb as much as I can. Yeah.
You're almost 10 years that you're now the executive director of Tonhalle.
No, 7.
7 years, okay.
Yeah.
7 years, 10 years, okay, but 7 years.
7 years.
The dangerous 7 years, you know.
The dangerous 7 years.
How was your experience as this first female executive director in Switzerland, in Zurich? Is it harder than in Germany or somewhere else where you've worked? Or?
It is definitely different. It's different than in other places. It's different than in other countries, because I think you feel a little bit here that the role model of females is a different positioning. And so when I was asked for taking over this position, I asked myself, is that the right time for me personally? Because this was the most important question for me. Is the position interesting? Is the time here being at Tonhalle Society during the life experience of the very, very long historical site the Tonhalle has? Is that an interesting slot for me personally? And so I felt, of course, there was a young conductor just elected, and everyone was really in a very, very uncertain way nervous. How does it work out? And they were very open to find someone who will be a perfect team with this very young conductor. And the other thing was that it was totally clear that there should be a renovation and that we have to build an interim space. And I was very keen on building an interim space because I worked for 7 or more than 8 years behind the scene on building a new Festspielhaus in Bonn for Beethoven. So I was very experienced in a way to having seen layouts, was traveling around the world for visiting the best concert halls, acousticians and things like that. So I thought in combination with this orchestra, with this wonderful orchestra, this is an interesting thing. And then the last thing was Zurich and Switzerland for me. I asked myself, what does it mean? Because I heard before, of course, many Germans, they said to me, oh, look, it's really different. And then I thought, I make it as a surprise. I see it as an experiment for myself. I will be the surprise in the way that I feel it's totally the right time being here. And of course, then when I had the chance also to bring Paavo here, with whom I worked for many, many years before, during my time in Bonn at the Beethoven Fest, as the director there, I was very, very happy and very convinced. And now we are having this move. So I think in some ways it was a huge advantage. I was not here before working, so no one knew me personally here in Switzerland, and so I could just say, I add the things you want to have from me. And of course I'm here a guest. I'm feeling a little bit like a guest here in this country, and I have to accept some rules, some mindsets, some things which are totally different in discussions, for example. But I like it very much, and I have the feeling I can add some things where people who are grown up here, if they would be directly saying, no, we can't do it in that way, it would be much more problematic for them. So I can insist in some ways, especially during these crises also now, which we have with the building, with Corona, COVID-19. So they're coming so many things together. And I think in that case, it's a little bit an advantage not being socialized from a kid here in Switzerland.
We come back to this crisis time, but you didn't give me an answer on how do you face a conservative audience. You said about, okay, it was an experiment, you felt like ready, you could build up something, but how were the reactions to you, not as a German, but as a woman?
I think it was always a combination. The reactions were not because of my person or being a woman or coming from Germany. It was much more, what is she doing? Is she really able, being in that leading position? Does she have creative ideas which are working and fitting into this setup here in Switzerland for the Tonhalle-Orchestra, for the Tonhalle at that time when I started here? And how is it possible that they both together, Lionel Brangier and Ilona Schmiel and the whole team, that they are successful in their, I would say, in their ideas, but also in their goals, that they have a clear strategy, what they wanted to reach during that time. And when they got the feeling that we are able to succeed in a certain way, and for example, with contemporary music, there were many people having huge problems because I thought we have to be much more contemporary and we have not always to look back. So there were many reactions and also, of course, people who don't like it. But I always try to communicate very directly with them. I call the people at home. I want to discuss them. So I was very open to give them also a platform that we had the chance to know each other better and better. Okay. And I think this is now an advantage for both sides that we have this time.
Okay. Let me stick a little bit with prejudices. I've read about the Russian conductor Petrenko. He said 5 years ago, orchestras react better when they have a man in front of them and a cute girl on the podium means that musicians think about other things. I guess you do not agree.
Clearly not. But I do think sometimes when we do take words outside of the context, it seems much more harsher than it is. And I have many male colleagues who also feel now there's like the other side of the prejudice where they're always being seen with these judgmental eyes, like, oh, you're not going to support female conductors. And so as a young conductor, I try to balance out how I feel about this, But of course, I think a big part of the reason behind this statement, I had a discussion with my teacher, that what everybody, not just male conductors, but female musicians, female everybody, what we think of a good leader is based on already who we have seen in the past, who have come in the past, which is not 50-50. So we are already biased. So that's one thing to have in mind when we read such sentences. And I think the best thing to do is to not to build negativity around these comments, but to use it as a way to look forward and to build hope in that we can someday have 50-50 more or less, that the next generation after us, when they look at the leadership positions, that there is no such biased ideas. It doesn't help to build confrontation or to build resistance towards each other, because in the end it's really all about music, and I think that point we all agree on. We just want to know, can you do the job? Can you make good music? Musicians don't really mind if it's a female or male conductor.
Is it really so? Because one hears quite often that orchestra players respond better to male conductors.
I think it's very individually based, because you could have a male conductor who tends to be more feminine, and he will have criticism in that way. When it comes to the female conductors and they are too feminine for some people's taste, then the immediate reaction is, oh, you see, female conductors can't lead. And it's very easy to group all the female conductors as one identity. But obviously we all have so many different ways of leading, different ways of communication, different tones of voices, different way of dressing, and it's very individual. And from the outside, it's easy to make it a bilateral, two different things. But I think I would say musicians get annoyed with both sexes, depending on that specific person and their habits or what they're doing well or not well. Not so much based on gender. It's easy to go there though, but I try not to go there.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I would say it is depending on the fact if an orchestra has many experiences, many very good experiences with female conductors or not. And if they are just starting with female conductors, then every person like you, like others, they are seen on the spot with a huge visibility. And it's, at the moment, I think we have to find a good balance.
Because the Tonhalle-Orchestra is not really used to be conducted by a woman.
Oh, we have some of them, of course, and we are very carefully looking whom are we engaging, because it is a huge responsibility. And if you, for example, give Holly the chance to conduct the orchestra with a huge program, she has only at the beginning one chance, and you have to be very careful. Is that the right timing? Is it the right program? Who is conducting before? Who is conducting afterwards? We are doing that in any case with any young conductor, also male conductor, to find the right week in a season, because otherwise you won't have so many things which you have to think about, and there are so many circumstances, and you have to be very aware of that.
So what made you, together with Paavo, choosing Holly? If you say you have to be very careful, you have to look very carefully, it has to be the right time, the right program. So what let's say, what you have to bring to be chosen?
It was, first of all, it was, the main thing is the wish of Paavo. He wanted to have Holly. And then I said I want to talk with her, because I was very much interested to support also female conductors. And I think it's a very, very good position to come very close also to the whole institution, not only to the orchestra as a conductor, but to get really a possibility to live with us over some months in your life. And you can, I think if you're clever, and she is clever, definitely, and she is curious, and she is asking many questions, which I like very, very much, I must say. And if you have these questions, you learn that there is not a single answer I can give you, but I can give you an insight how decisions are made and how leadership roles can be interpreted in totally different ways. And this, I feel, is one of the most important things, that you open up everything that you are willing to learn. We are all learning every day also. I am learning every day, especially in these times which we have right now. But I was then happy when I talked to Holly, and I immediately felt she's the right person right now here. And then we decided also to extend the contract and bringing her also back to good old Tonhalle when this beautiful hall is renovated, so that she has also the next year with us there. And so she can also compare how an orchestra, how an organization moves to another place back, and if there are also some new aspects which we want to discuss, also program-wise, what is about an audience, and all these totally different topics we can discuss. And I think you will make your own experiences on your landscape for the future, and definitely it's a network. And if she is clever, she uses this network also afterwards.
You said the most important thing, obviously, is you have to be a good musician. Second thing, you have to be self-confident, that we discussed it a little bit in the beginning. Now we heard from Ilona, you are curious, you are willing to learn, you have the right questions. What, in your opinion, are the preconditions for making it to the position you are now?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Curiosity is definitely one, but you have to be curious in the right things. I mean, right is not the right word I'm looking for, but for example, what you don't learn in school, things like how to deal with, or not deal with, but how to communicate with board members or sponsors, how to work with the marketing team, the social media team, how, if I was the music director someday, how would I utilize these tools, different departments of an organization, to make a bigger impact? So, because in school often we focus a lot on repertoire, the analysis, the ear training, rehearsal techniques, but everything is surrounded within the music bubble, the probe bubble. But there is so much more that a conductor at the level of Paavo has to do. And when I am now assisting him, I see so many things that he does besides the music making. And I wonder how he's able to handle all of it. But yeah, these other things you have to be curious about, how to manage, how to find the right people at the right time, and to work with departments outside of the music. And then the programming too is a big part that maybe not in school we don't talk about as much as we should. How to plan a 5-year program journey for your own orchestra when I'm later at the level of Paavo. Because you have to have a vision. It's not just this week we're going to do this concert and that's it. You have to think for the growth of the whole orchestra the whole time that you're the chief conductor, and that takes another way of mindset, another way of thinking about the repertoire and what will help the orchestra grow.
Networking, you mentioned. You said, okay, you get the chance to build up a network.
Yes.
Do you have already a networking, structured or unstructured, around you?
I always try to think of networking in the most unbusiness way possible, because what I have realized in my short experience living on this earth is that people appreciate genuineness. And people know right away, they can smell it, especially with people like Ilona, who has a lot of experience, and Paavo. They can smell it already from miles away when a student is coming towards them with an intention of wanting to get something, and people feel this right away. So I try to think of networking as a genuine way to get to know people, to have a passion for people and not just the work itself. I learned that when I was in high school, when I was a drum major of a marching band. I come from Southern California, and that's a big part of our culture. And I realized if I have already something that I want from someone, and then I go talk to them, it never works. But if I genuinely want to get to know them and grab a coffee or ice cream at that time in high school and just get to know them as who they are first, then you naturally build friendships and trust. And I think trust is a key element that a young conductor has to learn how to organically grow between relationships.
the genuine approach to networking can't work in your position?
You need to have a network. There's no doubt about it.
I might be naive.
I can just say there are different ways to reach out a network and to build it up. And I must say one very, very important part for me personally was always that I had 2 or 3 mentors. And I was learning from other leaders, and I was really very keen on getting their ideas and helping me to find my own way. And this is what I feel now at my age, one generation before you, Holly, definitely, that I want to give something back with these experiences, and that I want to empower people, that they find their way and that they are courageous enough and curious, but also that they take really responsibility. And this is something which is quite rare. And I must say, when I see that, when I smell it, that there's a person as a musician, as an artist, but also in the management, in very young ages, you can feel that there is someone, she or he is very gifted. And at the moment, of course, I try to pick out the young ladies and try to bring these young female kids, sometimes at the age of 14 or 15 years, I try to convince them that she has something which no one else has. Because it's not so easy to have people around these people who are willing to lead, because they are very often heard before that they are not easy kids, or that they are too ambitious, or that they are maybe not a team player, things like that. And I heard that also in my career and also in my early life as a kid and as a youngster. I heard that very often. So I felt, oh, maybe there's something totally wrong. And then I got and found mentors who told me, no, this is a very high and interesting and important ability, and you can make something out of it, and please use that as a factor and not against yourself, but develop your personality.
But when you say at the moment, you mentioned the crisis, the corona crisis. So is it really the good moment to push young females to go for it?
Yes, it's the best moment.
Right.
Now we have a crisis, and I think in every crisis you have to survive, and you have to focus yourself, what is the most important thing I can give to other people? And after a crisis, everyone is on the spot again, but you have, during these last months, a little bit more time to think with these younger and other people, to empower them, what is the next step? And therefore, you have time which you normally never have. And really this reduction in thinking of what is really the most important thing for the next step. Therefore, a crisis is a very good moment.
You agree?
I do. I think with every crisis, as Maren Alsop, one of my mentors, she says there's always an opportunity for growth, for change. And I'm so appreciative that we have someone like Ilona who thinks this way, because when there is no more normalcy, also from the audience's perspective, they can only have more openness, whether they realize it or not. Because now they're just appreciative to have music, live music again. So in a way, we have more opportunity to present newer concepts, newer repertoire, and things like this. I think I completely agree with Ilona.
So what can you both do to boost more interest among young women in pursuit of your profession?
To boost more interest. I think there's plenty of interest, honestly, that I'm very thankful for, because with my male colleagues, some of them feel that now it's even harder for them, the younger ones, to try to push through the competition. And the competition is very fierce. To boost, I think it's always important not to rush into anything. And Paavo always tells me also, don't be in a rush, don't be in a hurry to make a career. It's not about being famous fast. You want to have a nice, steady growth, slow growth.
But you're very young. I mean, don't rush into your career. I mean, when I look at your age, I might mention that you're turning 30 in a few days.
Yeah.
obviously you did rush. You started quite late with your musical career.
I did. I'm very lucky, and I don't know how I got lucky, but somehow the stars kind of lined up when it needed to line up. But that's not to say that the hard work was not there. I really do try to keep up with the rest of my colleagues who started when they were 4 or from the mother's belly. And I'm just grateful to be here, really. It feels fast only when I look back. But in the moment, I'm very busy. I keep myself busy with studying and working, that I don't realize that I'm on a fast train. I don't notice it until I look back. Oh. But with orchestral conducting and orchestral repertoire, it's only been 5, 6, 7 years that I've delved into this repertoire. And there's still so much to learn. And Paavo tells me all the time, you are crazy if you think you can learn and do everything, every style. There's so much repertoire that's not enough for 1 lifetime, not even 2, 3 lifetimes. Mm-hmm. So on one hand, that's comforting, but I am doing my best to keep learning, to keep expanding my knowledge. Yeah.
You're born in South Korea, you've grown up in California. I mean, we have this prejudice in South Korea. You have these tiger mothers who raise their children ambitiously as they can. Yeah. Was it the case with you?
Thankfully not. I had almost like a hippie mother. She's very free-spirited and very easygoing, very unstressful. She's an artist herself, so maybe part of this is why she's that way. She never really forced us to do anything. I just remember she's an interior designer, and on the weekends we would go to places like these, like warehouses, and help her paint the walls and to shove things around for decorations. And my dad was an ex-baseball player professionally in Korea. He and I have a huge age gap, 40 years. So when he was playing baseball, it was not yet as popular as it is now in Korea. But he's still very proud of it, that he was a professional baseball player. And he also, probably more than my mom, he was more strict with us. And I think it comes from the athletic training, that it's very intense, and he's very neat, like very OCD, and the chores had to be done at a certain time, almost like having a military father. But when it came to music, he didn't support it at the beginning, and our family was really poor when I was going through puberty age. I was working 5 to 6 part-time jobs to just make enough money for the rent, and he didn't support it because of the financial status of our family, and he didn't think that it was a wise choice to go into arts when even he himself couldn't support financially for his daughter. So I went into business school for 1 year. It was not the right choice. So I came right back out as quickly as I could. And for 2 years, I went to Pasadena City College, a community college, to get my credits done so that I could transfer to a proper music conservatory. And from then on, music was a sure thing, and my dad couldn't say yes or no. He tried for many years to convince me to get out of it. But I respectfully declined all of his offers. He wanted me to go into the army really strongly. And he said, "You did marching band, you'll be great at being a soldier." And I think I could have actually. I probably would have done well in an army. And I like this. I like the structure. I like being fair and justice and morally correct. And I try. Yeah, but I am just incredibly thankful for all the opportunities. I could have never asked for it. My family is not coming from a classical music background. They still don't like the classical music, so I'm trying to every day influence them. This is good for your soul.
But obviously now they are very proud, even they're not into classical music.
Yeah.
What about you, Ilona? I mean, we have also prejudice about with the Germans. You have this German culture background, being hierarchical in leading and in giving commands. Is your cultural background, or your German background, reason for your executive career?
No, I would say it was a cultural background in another way, because I was the first woman in my family who had the chance to study. And so I felt a huge responsibility. What could I do? And what could I give back in a certain way after some years back to my family? And I felt really a very, very strong responsibility on the one hand side. On the other, I was totally free. So I was supported, really grown up as a kid, and also music was always something which was very important. I grew up with classical music, but I was never forced to go in that direction. But when I started, they always said, you must have an idea what you want to do with it. Otherwise, we are not financing it anymore. So I decided then I have to finance my study by myself. Then I can do everything what I want to do. This was a very good decision at the end. And I was grown up in a way, so there was one step after the other. And if I look backwards now, then I must say there were some parts in my life where I just decided, okay, I'm maybe not ready for that step, but I just do it. I'm so curious about it. And if I fail, then I'm very young. Mm-hmm. And this is maybe looking backwards. Now I know that I had this attitude to deal with it.
So you always had in mind, I could fail?
Oh, yes.
You too?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
It's part of growth. You have to accept it.
Okay. Okay.
That's the only way to stay mentally strong, I think, to accept that it will happen.
But if you have in mind, I could fail, but you obviously don't want to fail, and I have to ask this question as a woman, do you have to be tougher and better to succeed, or would you say no? I mean,
I would say at the beginning I had to work much harder. Yes, I had to work much harder to seen on the spot on a certain level to be accepted, but afterwards not, no.
What about you?
I think the same. The glass ceiling is not yet broken, and so until that is broken, we have to continue to give our best. But it's not really dependent on what we do, but how people perceive us. Mm-hmm. So to change that perception, I think it just takes time because we're just not used to it as much.
Where do you want to go to end up? Do you want to be the conductor of the Philharmonic Orchestra, or what's your, sincerely, honest, where do you want to be in 10 years, or maybe in 2 years?
10 years is too short, I would say, because it is a marathon to be a world star conductor. It's a really long marathon. And honestly speaking, I am always focused on how to use music to better the society or just the community around you, so that it's not just about me giving my concerts and just me earning hundreds of thousands of dollars just for myself, but how do I use that to help other people? And coming from a poor background, I really have a huge heart for people who are of less fortunate backgrounds too. So education, things like the El Sistema program, something similar like this. And then of course, to help the female conductors or future female musicians, composers, artists, to have perhaps an easier way to get to the top. There are many ways to influence music, with music, people around you. And I really try to think in a very wide range of entrepreneurial kind of mindset rather than just one thing. Because I think if you have one life and just to live it for your own success, glory, fame, for me personally, that feels a little bit meaningless. Because in the end, the whole scale of history and time, you're literally just one little tiny speck in the whole history. So what does it mean to just live for yourself? So for me, fame and money is not the priority, rather influence, education, legacy, giving back. As Ilona said, this is much more important for me.
You've done most of it, what Holly just mentioned about where you want to go and what do you want to give. Is there anything you still want to achieve?
This is a really good question. And honestly speaking, during the Corona time, I started to question myself, what's going on? What does it mean for me personally, for all of us in that crisis, with our music business? Because I felt there are so many things going completely wrong. And so now I'm I'm doing a little bit research for myself. What could be a next step, but not right now, because at the moment it's absolutely clear that I'm happy here, that we have to move back to Tonhalle, and that we have many, many things which we really want to do. But at a certain point of time, I want to change some things in our music business. And if I would need then to change a city, a place, the institution, I would do it.
Okay, it's a little bit enigmatic, but one can figure out what it could be. Would you do something different if you could?
I'm totally open. I have done so many things now, and I can only say it has to be something which has such a fascination that I would say I can't say no. And I cannot answer today what this will be, but it's not something in the next 2-3 years. It may last longer.
Okay, I think that's a nice ending. Fortunately, we still have you a few years, more years, hopefully. But yeah, I'd say as long as Paavo is here. And we're very glad, Holly, that you are here in Zurich, in Switzerland. I hope you stay, and maybe we can go on even a bit longer than it was planned. And thank you very much for the talk, and looking forward to hearing you in the concert.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thank
Holly.
you, Ilona. Yeah.